Welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today's episode features a really cool human being that I actually met through social media. So believe it or not, you can actually find some pretty dope people when you decide to reach out, connect, follow, comment, etc. on social media. I found her through one of her platforms because she has so many. And I started following her and was just really inspired by the pictures, the imagery, the content in general that she was sharing via Instagram was really just touching me in a really amazing way. And so today we are going to have a little bit of a candid conversation about motherhood, about birthing, about the role specifically of a doula. So this is definitely for my women out there. I mean, men, of course, you can listen. But in the spirit of recent Mother's Day that we celebrated, I thought that this episode would be appropriately placed here. So get comfortable, take a couple of long, deep, cleansing breaths, and get ready to listen to another conversation. Well, we will just dive right in. Just, this is just a casual, candid conversation. The reason that I like using the app is because sometimes once the conversation gets going, people kind of forget, oh yeah, I'm recording a podcast, because it's like you're just talking on the phone. But we're going to start with, I'm just going to give you the floor and let you introduce yourself to whoever's listening. Tell us your name, maybe your astrological sign, if you're into that, your day job, and then maybe share like one of your passions.
All right. My name is Christina, and thank you for having me. That was just interesting how we, fought through, and I'm thankful to be able to, share. But I'm a Pisces, which is interesting as always. But I'm on the cusp. So I'm on the last day, and I'm on the cusp of rebirth. And I definitely feel like that's what it's been about. Continuing to rebirth. My day job right now is doulaing. I am a birth and postpartum doula. And one of my passions is also connected to what I do, which is yoga. And just really, I feel writing as well. So creativity is is everything for me. So for me to be like just one, I'm like, that's difficult a little bit. But those are the things that definitely I would say stand out and connect me to, to other things as well. So yeah.
Awesome. So for those who don't know, can you explain a little more about what a doula is and what that role entails and how you support women with that practice?
Sure. Doula is a Greek word. So the meaning behind it is servant, a woman's servant. And it pretty much, you are her servant it can be from labor to birth, and then it can be from birth to postpartum. So depending on where she would like you to show up and hold space for her, your services would entail showing up, of course, being able to hold space, maybe massage, feeding, making sure that mama is fed during labor if that's what she wants. But overall, and it can get into the specifics. I can get into the specifics, of course, but overall, it's just reminding mamas and families of their power and making sure that they get the birth that they want. And it's very powerful space to be in. I give information as far as lactation, breastfeeding, healing after. It takes a woman's body up to a year to heal after, such
wow.
a major event.
Yeah.
So being able to hold space, and that fourth trimester with postpartum is really big because in the Black community, I don't think that the awareness is there. We, have labeled it possibly something different, but being able to show up for that fourth trimester and hold space for mom when baby is getting attention and love from everyone else is pretty big. I am a full spectrum doula.
Okay.
So, full spectrum is how would I explain it? I feel like it's just being able to hold greater space.
Okay.
For women who may have miscarriages, who may have, who may want to receive abortions, who have stillbirths, making sure that everyone is supported through this process, through the transition. And that's really, it's big in a sense for me personally. Also, I have a daughter, so making sure that she's educated as well. So a doula, I feel, encompasses all of that as far as reminding a person of their power and holding space, be in that neutral place.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that in the detail that you did. I am too a mother, and my son is, 16 years old now. And 16 years ago in Dallas, Texas, where I was living at the time, where, I gave birth and went through my second and third trimester, kind of like in the middle of transitioning from living in one state to living in another state, and, going through relationship changes and all these kinds of things going on. I remember when I looked back at the very beginning of my pregnancy and I said, I'm going to do this total, like, holistic, hippie, earth-like experience. And I'm going to find myself a doula, and I'm going to do a home birth. And, that was my plan at the beginning. And then when the time came, I didn't have that experience. I actually carried till 42 weeks and was, had a very old school doctor who was saying, oh, no, we're going to induce the labor. And I had 26 hours of induced labor, which was ridiculous, and ended up having to have a C-section. And I remember that experience when I think about it now, 16 years later. It was very traumatic. And my intention at the beginning of my pregnancy was to have an experience where a woman would be that coach, that partner, essentially, through the pregnancy and through the labor and delivery and the postpartum. And I'm really glad you brought that up, because I've never heard anyone refer to the fourth trimester before. This is the very first time that I've ever heard that. And as I was listening to you, I was like, yeah, there is a fourth trimester, and it does feel like it lasts for 12 to 18 months. And you know what I mean? During that time, I did not have a doula or a woman who could hold that space. And I, overcame severe postpartum depression for almost 24 months after my son was born. And a lot of it I believe, from having such a traumatic labor and delivery experience. And so I commend and honor you for taking that charge and answering that call to do that. Because if I could, turn back time, I'd be on the phone like, Christina, can you come to Dallas? You know what I'm saying?
I would be there. So, and I, my heart, I send, love to you, because that trauma is real. And there are a lot of women who have been through it. And our womb is such a sacred place that there's layers that we have to continue to pull back. And I go in sometimes, and a mom may not even want me to cook or prepare anything. She just may want to talk. And so When you mentioned trauma, it was just like, yes. So being able to be that shoulder as well, and just that support, it's definitely big for me, to be able to show up in that way.
No, do you?
So thank you.
Yo, hey, it's so when I think about like this podcast, for instance, and a lot of people have asked me, what's your podcast about? And I'm like, it's about a lot of things. It's about things that resonate with me, things that I've experienced, things that I, see in present day, things that I recall from previous experiences. And when it comes to a featured guest, I always think about, when I think of this person, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I come up with like the topic, so to speak, that we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And from, seeing you on social media through Thick Girl Yoga, plug for that. And then Thick Girl Yoga, check it out on Instagram, Facebook, and everywhere that social media can be found. When I found you there, and then, just started watching just your yoga journey and watching the body positivity and the embracing of femininity that was coming through that, and then being able to connect with you, through other social media platforms, and then being able to share space with you. Yes. Finally, it seems like, yes. A couple of weeks ago in our Sistar circle, and continuing that journey of connection has been really powerful for me, just to be a compassionate witness to seeing what you're doing and the healing that you're creating in the lives of others. And I just need to send you some love and appreciation for that, to let you know that if you don't already know, you are definitely walking in your truth, and you're definitely standing firmly in that path that is really already laid out for you. So I'm excited you decided to say yes to that.
Yes. I accept that.
Good.
Wholly, yes.
Good. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you find that women in the Black community, Black women, or Black mothers, are open to the idea of, I guess, alternative approaches to the pregnancy and the labor and delivery than versus like adopting the traditional like Western medicine and that kind of thing? Do you notice?
I think I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think that, currently I feel in the day and age that we're in, a lot of people are going back. A lot of people are going back to that ancestral wisdom, and that's a part of my training. So I do think that there's not a lot of awareness about what we can receive. That's right there in our face. Because I will say, from my personal journey, I knew I wanted to have a water birth. I'm like, I love the water. I never really cared for hospitals. It was really expensive, though. I went on the West Side to a birth center that was comparing a wedding to the birth. And I was like, I didn't even plan on paying $30,000 for a wedding.
Right.
And I'm just like, isn't my body doing all of the work? Like, isn't it me doing the work? So, luckily, not even luckily, like, it was divine that I met my midwife and my doulas, which one of them, Roz, and Rashad from Crimson Fig. I have to plug her every time because she's still my midwife helping me birth. But I had a team of sisters around me who helped me to bring, Hannah through, my daughter. And I had to step out of what I saw. I was a doula before I knew I was a doula. At 14, I was in the hospital holding my aunt's hand while she got an epidural from my aunt. I attended abortions in high school and supported my girlfriends. So I think it's a matter of putting these things in our face, these experiences, and sharing it and making it to where it's average. Because right now it's average for a woman in New York to pay $3,000 to $5,000 for a doula. and we don't see that. We don't see the fact that we deserve our our own space,
right.
but also our own doulas who look like us.
Yes.
So yeah. So
yes,
it's one of those things where I feel that we have to just normalize it to where it's definitely okay to have a doula. It's definitely okay to have someone present who can hold space and speak your rights while you're in labor, or being able to know that you can get your placenta encapsulated and it's not anything that's weird, but it's something that's, that was traditionally done as well. So yeah, it's just I feel it's a matter of putting it in our face a little bit and then seeing if we're open to trusting it.
Right. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. And yes, like you said, shout out to Roz, the doula. Shout out to Rasha. Shout out to all of the women of color, Black women who have answered the call and, like you said, are embracing these really ancient tribal practices that were the norm. The idea of taking a woman into this sterile environment where people go to die to have a baby.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Was always the craziest thing to me, that the idea, because I too am not a fan of hospitals. I feel like, yes, hospitals are a place where illness is supposedly treated, but I also know that hospitals have morgues in them. And I don't, the idea of birthing life into a place where people are breathing their last breath, I'm all about, the transition and reciprocity of, of living. However, I still it never sat right with me. And something about having women supporting and holding space for women while we are, like you said, doing all the work, while our bodies are doing all the work, is a really powerful practice. And it feels like that's the way that it was always done. That's the way that it's the way that it was always done. If I think back to, as far as like the stories that have been shared with me by my elders and those who have passed on, that when it was time for a woman, when a woman discovered that she was with child or she was pregnant or whatever they referred to it as at that time, she went to the women in her tribe and said, I'm about to have a baby. And it was celebrated and she was embraced and she was nurtured and she was cared for from beginning till end, whatever the end was, whether it was, like you said, a live, thriving birth, or if it was a stillborn birth, or if it was a termination, that she was carried through that. And I think that present day, something else that's really standing out for me as I'm listening to you is the way that a doula supports the women who do choose to terminate their pregnancy for reasons of their own understanding. To be able to have a doula, a person who is trained and holds just that magic to be able to hold space for those women is so powerful, because I've had a termination as a young child as a result of a sexual assault. And I also had a termination as an older adult who just made poor choices, and that was the best thing for me at the time. And I can say in neither of those instances did I have another woman who said, I'm here to hold space for you. I'm here to hold your hand. I'm here to, like you said, be that shoulder. I didn't have that. And so it makes me so happy to know that people like you walk in this world who are able to hold that space and shred those layers of shame that are often carried as a result of those experiences, because a woman's body is imperfect. I have friends and family members who've experienced miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage, and there's shame that they carry because of that, because they didn't have that woman, that doula, that magical goddess energy around them to say, I got you, and we gonna be all right. And so
Right.
when people think of doulas, I don't even know if they go that far to think of how powerful these women actually are. So I just want to say, girl, I'm just feeling so happy about you right now.
Yeah, and it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and I definitely want to share my story more. But yeah, I'm also, as I said, I love to write, and so a lot of my outlet has been writing and sharing creatively, of course, through poetry, my journey. But I have suffered, well, not, I wouldn't say suffered, but I have had a miscarriage. I've had terminations as well. So I'm able to connect, I feel, in another way.
Right.
Because of that, just the understanding and going through some of the same things and being able to really work on my healing
Right.
so that I can be in this place. But that's one of the things that I believe that we should know is that we'll be supported and we won't be judged.
Yes.
That's big. That's just in general, I'm not judging you. I'm here.
Right.
How you want me to show up.
Right, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, are most of the women that you work with, are these women that also have partners that they're, going through their, whether, husbands, spouses, girlfriends, boyfriends, or do you work with just the women one-on-one? How do you show up for them?
I've worked with families. I've worked one-on-one, mother and daughter. I had 3 generations in a room before.
Wow.
When I interview with people who want to meet with me, it's more or less, we're vibing each other out. And usually before sometimes the interview, just, I would say that initial conversation, you kind of know.
Okay.
So, it's a matter of who is open to receiving.
Okay.
I have no bias.
Okay.
And as I said, I'm there to support. So I do have a couple who is looking at insemination, to bring, beautiful life into this world. I've had clients who are single and, they want me to be there in the space just to hold some space and show up if they need anything. And then you have the really hands-on clients and the married clients. And so there's support that I feel shows up in all different ways.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what is the, for those who don't know, what is the difference, or I guess one of the biggest differences between the role of a midwife and the role of a doula?
A midwife is medical. She is the person who can give medical attention in a sense of a pap smear. She can put her hand down there and check. Okay. She's able to, she understands the form and, the position of the baby while still in the womb. And some doulas know these things as well, but the fine line is that doulas aren't to give any medical information.
Okay. Okay.
And that's one of the things that I'm just like, it depends on who you're servicing. Because some of my teachers say that we should check blood pressure. And in the Black community, we should definitely check blood pressure.
Yes.
Even though I'm not a medical doctor, as a person who cares about you.
Yes.
In general, I would say, yeah, we can just go ahead and look at that real
Go ahead and
quick.
check that out. Just make sure there ain't no hypertension happening in there. Yeah. Exactly.
So, and the midwife, I would say the midwife comes in after, in most cases, but, sometimes the midwife can be the doula as well.
Okay.
But usually I would say the midwife comes in to deliver the baby as like the OBGYN does. So she'll be there through that active labor. And before that, you'll have your doulas there supporting you, maybe, rubbing your back or positioning you however you like, water, ice chips, honey chips, all that good stuff.
Okay. Okay. Now, earlier you mentioned the support that you are able to provide for women in the fourth trimester, and that it can take up to a year for a woman to fully recover after giving birth. Now, in this nation, women get on average, what, like 6 to 8 weeks of, maternity leave from their job, if that. How do you show up for these women after the birth and once the baby is here and thriving? What kinds of things are you teaching them or coaching them through?
I would say the biggest thing is just reminding them that they have to rest, reminding them that they just gave birth. They just gave birth to another life,
a human,
or
yeah.
they just went through a transition, just a big transition, through, physical, one that's spiritual, definitely one that's mental. And, it's like, you're supposed to be resting. Let everyone else do everything. People should not be coming to your house without food, or, without having some intention of maybe, doing the laundry, or, hey, dishes. So reminding them of that, and then, reminding them to eat.
Right.
Because I have mamas who we're feeding and we're giving them that liquid gold, which is awesome, but we're not remembering to feed ourselves.
Right.
And granted, it's totally understandable because there's a lot going on. But we have to learn to kind of put ourselves first again. And so it's remembering, who you are and not getting too lost, so that you can still stay connected and take care of yourself through the transition. So some of those things that I mentioned, I offer. So I'll come through and make a healing soup. I offer a healing bath as well, after birth bath. Massage. And we wrap the stomach. We wrap the womb. It depends on how, I'm to show up. How one family who Baba was a chef, so I have to cook.
Well, there you go. You're like, I don't need to do that part.
Yes, I didn't have to, show up in that space. So, I showed up by, massaging and rubbing mama's feet and giving her, some self-care, some time for herself while the baby was napping.
That's so dope. I feel like every woman needs a doula, like, all the time.
Yes.
Like, not just, not like, especially, mamas and the mothers and, grandmothers, I feel like women need a doula, like, every day, just depending on, what I mean, your life. And I say specifically for moms because, as a mother myself, I do remember when my son was born, that feeling of, okay, it's not about me anymore necessarily. Like, I immediately felt like it's not about me. And I remember being in, the hospital and talking to family on the phone, still groggy from anesthesia. And my grandfather, this was like the last time that I actually spoke to my grandfather, was when I was in the hospital the day that my son was born. And he said to me, okay, you know that your life is not yours anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. And I knew that he wasn't saying it, in a negative way, but it was that sensation of like, your life is not yours anymore, Keisean. Your life is now for this child. And what was interesting about that is 11 days later, my grandfather transitioned, and it was like he was here in spirit, so to speak, when my son was born, and then he transitioned. And it's so crazy because I feel like my son is the second iteration of my grandfather, which is just a trip in itself. So, but I remember that feeling of everything that I do from here on is going to impact, influence, and affect this other person. And not necessarily realizing that if I'm not eating, if I'm not sleeping, if I'm not, being active in some form, if I'm not taken care of spiritually and emotionally and mentally, it's going to impact and influence this child. And a lot of mothers forget that. Because, well, one, from sleep deprivation, probably our brains are not quite as functional, but we forget. And it's like sometimes we have this awakening at some point. And for me, the awakening was when my son was like a teenager, that I was like, wait a minute. Okay, you're pretty much self-sufficient, to an extent at this point. You don't really need me to like get you up for school and make your lunch. You can do a lot of things on your own. I need to do something for me. But it was like 12 years later, you know what I mean? It was like, I haven't had a massage in a decade, those kinds of things that I think women do need, that reminder, that support that says, hey, did you take a shower today? You know what I mean? Did you soak in a tub for 45 minutes or longer if you want to? Did you eat, one of your favorite foods or something like that? Because we're enamored with our children. We are in love with them before they even come out into the world. So we want to just give, and give. And we sometimes forget that we do have to retain, some of it for ourselves. And I think that's also a really powerful part of what you do, is to be that source of reminding, like, yeah, I got you. I'm here to support you. I too am a mother. I know what this feels like, or I can at least relate to what it feels like. And yes, you do need to go and, let me sit and massage your feet for a little while and the baby will be okay, and to know that that's important. So I think it's really, really cool in that sense, because sometimes our society doesn't necessarily as much, I think starting to maybe change now, but doesn't necessarily support or celebrate the role of the full-time mother and what that looks like to try to balance. In the work that I do, I have a client who is a relatively new mom. She had, strangely enough, a very similar birthing experience as to what I had, but, had her first child a little later in life. And she, shared with me recently that she was feeling really bad about not being able to have that fourth trimester with her son, and having to rush back to work and hiring nannies and all these different kinds of things. And that feeling of, why can't I just be home with him until he can walk? Why can't I just do that? What would that look like? And I, try to give her as much encouragement as I can. I'm like, well, I can help you start a business that you can do from home,
Yes,
and that's a way to get around it. But, now let me ask
there's
you
a
this.
way.
There's a way. I was going to say there's a way.
There's always, and that's, I tell I do, I work with all levels, all levels. So, even putting just a plug out there, reach out to a doula. You never know what's on her schedule or who she can connect you with. Don't look at it all as money. Because if you have a service that you can offer and she may need a website, then you have a website.
Yes, ma'am.
And so I think sometimes we have to get out of the mindset of just thinking that all we have to offer is money, which is really dope. It's good. It's good stuff.
Right.
But it's also a matter of being aware of our own skills and talents and being able to exchange and uplift each other in those areas as well. And I'm sorry, you said you had a question. So.
No, yeah, I was gonna, but it kind of just naturally segued into that. I was gonna ask you, based on what you've shared and what you described, and I think you said earlier that, if a woman wanted to hire a doula, it's, $3,000 to $5,000 for that kind of service. How do you, as, a doula, as a, in this business, in a business sense, how do you make your services accessible? And you kind of like answered the question. So, you kind of said to reach out. And I think, and the reason I asked this too, is I think of like, I say younger moms, but I look at, the moms that are maybe teen moms, who don't necessarily have the resources financially to afford what is I consider to be a priceless service. That how are they able to, work with someone like yourself? Do they, can they volunteer, service hours after the baby shows up? Or are you able to like kind of work with those kinds of families or those kinds of moms who don't necessarily have the means?
Yes. And I will say that there are creative ways to find the means.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
we, instead of having a baby shower, maybe we have something where we're, fundraising for your doula services. Or maybe we have something where we're letting people know that you want a doula and seeing who wants to support that. Because that's another thing too, is we have to look at resources and know that we're supported, or that we will be supported. So, I'm open to those things as well. And I've done services for no, so it's a service that I feel is very hard to put enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because of it. So, as I say, just reach out, send me an email, and, we'll work from there. But understanding that where I am in my journey as far as being a doula and being able to provide the support. I'm also aware that this needs to spread.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what I look forward to to in the future is teaching doulas, teaching people, how to show up for even our elderly right now. We talk about our future, which is strong and is full of fire. These babies are being born just full of fire, aware, lifting their head up, opening their eyes. But we can't forget about there's also death doulas, so we have to be aware that our elderly need our support and our time, our attention as well. So I do look forward to sharing, my knowledge, from my wonderful teachers, because that's one of the things I do want to say really briefly is that I've had some awesome teachers, and without them, I wouldn't be able to. It would be much harder for me to come, to where I am today. So I'm thankful for that support. But just being aware that this is for us. This is something that was going on way before I could remember. So I definitely feel divinely in tune and aligned to what I'm doing, and the services that I'm providing for all people, for people of color, most definitely. But I'm there as, again, I said, a neutral place to families going through this transition, because it's big.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Thank you for that. I mean, I love your vision. And as I was listening to you, I'm just like, oh, I see her in a room full of women and couples and families and educating them on the power of this work and the necessity of this service, of the magic that you provide for these families. Because I think you're right. I think that creating visibility is huge, and visibility will create accessibility, and that will create resources, because once people realize, oh, this is something that we need, this isn't just something like, no shade, this isn't just something that like white folks on the West Side do, this is something that Black folks, ancient Black folks were doing. This is something that we can do for each other, and to know that there are ways to be able to make it available, and that it's not just for this and not just for that. And because I tell you, before today, if someone asked me what a doula was, I was like, oh, they're like a birthing coach or something. I think I really didn't know.
Yeah,
I really didn't know.
That's one of the lines there. That's one of the things that sometimes I'll share with people so they can have a closer understanding to what it is, because again, like, it's a Greek word. So
right.
But yeah
but it's like, I feel enlightened, because now I'm like, oh no, a doula, everybody needs a doula. Like, every woman that I know, you need one. And if you are in the process of preparing to bring life, you need one. And if you, like you said, I'm so glad you mentioned the death doula element, because you're right. There's transitions that are happening that are bringing life, that are transitioning life out of the body, coming through the body. And then when, soul is leaving the body. And it sounds like there's just a space that needs to be held, particularly for women. Because I think of like my mother, for instance. My mother is a mother of 5, and she's also one of 8. And her mother, my grandmother, transitioned at the end of last year. And it's only been a couple of months. And I know that all of her 8 children are still living. They are all still, obviously, in that very, very early stage of acceptance that their mother has transitioned. And my grandma, Mildred, shout out to Grandma Mildred, she was everybody's mother. She was everybody's mother. She birthed 8 children, into this world, and had 22 grandchildren and another 10 great grandchildren. So she was a OG mother, and if I think about her life and how much she prevailed, and overcame, that if she had a doula, you know what I mean? Just if she had a doula, like how, what that would have been like. And in a lot of ways, her friends and her daughters, essentially were her doulas as she was beginning to transition out of her bodies. Her granddaughters, we were able to be those doulas for her, those just representations of powerful femininity that show up in a way that, no shade to men, but only women can. There's something that only we can. There's things that only they can, but there's a lot of things that only we can do for each other. And it just makes me so excited to think about where this is going, because I really think that you, Christina, are part of a movement, part of an awakening that is happening in our community of women. And I appreciate you for being so open and sharing the knowledge that you did. And I'm plugging you all over the place. So find her. Maybe next time she comes on, we'll talk about yoga. But this time, this is where I was felt to lead this conversation. So I'm not going to keep you too much longer. But before we go, I just want to make sure that you share how people can connect with you through social media and et cetera. And then we will wrap it up.
Great. And of course, the breakdown that you gave when you said visibility, accessibility, I was like, those were the words I was looking for. Straight to the point. But yeah, that's what we need. And Black Maternal Health Week was last week, and it was beautiful, but something that needs to be it's something that needs to be continued, as far as the awareness that we have our power, and that we can go into these hospitals supported. We can have home births at birth centers. We can birth at home. It's a matter of knowing that we can do these things. I can be contacted at SheRoseDoulaServices@gmail.com. And I know that's a mouthful, and it's SHEROSE doulaservices@gmail.com. I'm also on Facebook as She Rose Doula Services. I have an Instagram as well, same thing. Actually, I'm sorry, it's She Rose Doula. I am a mamapreneur, and definitely a person who wants to give and serve. So contact me, and we can roll from there.
Yes. And yes, she is a mama, y'all, and her daughter, Hannah, just celebrated her 6th year. Yes.
Yes, her 6th year.
Awesome.
Mighty child.
Mighty child. Yes, girl. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Yes.
She's a fire baby. So she's 420. I had a midwife and an OBGYN. So the OBGYN said her due date would be 420. My midwife told me she'll get here when she's supposed to. She came on 420 at 9:17 p.m., 3 pushes. And yeah.
There you go. Oh, I love it. She's like, I already have my appointment, so I'll be there. Thank you. Make sure you have everything ready for me. And here I am. I love it. Well, Thank you so much, Christina, for saying yes. I'm super grateful because, everyone that I reached out to a couple weeks ago about being a featured guest on this podcast, everyone said yes, even though I told them very little about what we will be doing or talking about. But I love that people are showing up for me. And like I said, my intention for this podcast, one of my intentions is to create a space where people can come on, share a little bit of their magic, a little bit of their gift, and create a space for people to be able to connect and grow. So again, if you're listening to this, connect with Christina. She's an amazing human being. We talked about just one of her gifts today, but she does have many, many more that we can explore at another time. So thank you so much again, and I will talk to you soon.
You have a wonderful day.
Okay, you too. Okay, bye. Peace. Wow. When I tell you that there are no two episodes of this podcast that are alike, that is an understatement, to say the least. That conversation was so beautiful and really created the space for me to open up and share some things about my story, my journey, some facets of who I am. And I really, really feel so educated and enlightened by the information that Christina shared. Be sure to connect with her if you have any further questions, which I'm sure many of you may. I know for damn sure that I want to hire a doula right now. And I'm sure there's some other women who are out there thinking the same thing to themselves. So be sure to connect with Christina Wherry. You can find her on Facebook with her first and last name. You can also find her on She Rose Doula Services on Facebook, on Instagram. And again, you can always connect with any of my guests that are on the podcast. If you can't find them on social media, you can always connect to them through me. I just want to say thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. The mother, the healer, and the woman in me recognizes the beautiful mother and the healer in you, Christina. And I just appreciate you for taking the time and for saying yes to being a part of this experience with me. I know the information that you shared is really going to fall upon the listeners that really need to hear it. So thank you for being so open. I look forward to connecting with you again soon. I appreciate you, girl. You have your choice of podcasts that you can listen to, tune into, subscribe to, and share. And I want to take a moment to just express my sincere gratitude for you choosing this one. In this moment right here and now, I see the light, I see the love, I see the wisdom, I see the beauty, the prosperity, and the abundant joy shining within you. And I bow humbly before your divinity. Namaste. Peace, y'all.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.